In this video, I'm going to tell you why, if you are currently a Nikon DSLR shooter, it's really the time for you to jump into the mirrorless world with this Nikon Z6 II. Kia ora, good morning everyone, Richard Wong here. Welcome back to the channel. When Nikon released the full-frame mirrorless camera Nikon Z6 about 2 years ago, I was probably one of the first that pre-ordered one, and I have been using the Z6 to shoot professionally and also as my everyday camera over the last 2 years, and I really like it. It's not a perfect camera, but overall I think it's a very good camera. But I know that a lot of Nikon shooters, they have been thinking about moving to the Z6, moving to the mirrorless camera world, but they haven't done it because of many different reasons. Maybe because you want to have the dual card slot, or you want to have the eye autofocus, or some of you just want a fully functional battery grip, or maybe you just think this is the first generation mirrorless camera from Nikon, so you are just waiting for the second generation product. I have done a video here that share with you my experience when I shoot professionally using a Z6 and D750 side by side. So I compare the pros and cons using each of these camera, which does better in some of the area. So even though I personally prefer to use the mirrorless camera more, but I can definitely see there are area that a DSLR camera actually does better, and there are lots of reasons why you may still want to stay in the DSLR world. But now Nikon has released their second generation full-frame mirrorless camera, including this one, the Nikon Z6 II. With the release of the Z6 II, Nikon has fixed pretty much all the major complaints about the original Z6. For example, now it has the dual card slot, which is one of the major things that people complain about. It has 2 processors, which should have improved the performance of the camera in many areas, including autofocus, and it also has a fully functional battery grip. So I have been shooting with it for a little while, testing the performance of it and taking lots of different photos and videos. And I also talked to some of my friends and other people who bought a Z6 II as their first ever mirrorless camera. So I was originally going to just do my normal typical review, talk about all the different performance, high ISO, autofocus, and all the this and that. But I thought maybe I shouldn't bore you with all those details in this video. Instead, I should just go back and revisit the idea about whether you should move to mirrorless or you should still stay with DSLR. In some way, I feel like we just suddenly go back like around 10 or 15 years ago when the digital camera just first came out, and there were still lots of debates about film camera versus digital camera, which one is better, until finally I think most people will agree digital camera is the better camera for most people. So I think with the release of the Nikon Z6 II, we also reached the point that I think mirrorless camera like this Nikon Z6 II is the better choice than DSLR camera for most users. I'm not saying mirrorless camera is 100% better than DSLR camera, and it definitely is not better in every single area. DSLR camera still has a few advantages. For example, the optical viewfinder, there is no lag at all, and also battery life, DSLR is still much better than mirrorless camera. So there are definitely something that DSLR is still better than mirrorless camera, but I feel overall with the latest improvement in the mirrorless camera technology, the advantage of using a mirrorless camera is far bigger than using a DSLR camera. So I'm going to share with you 5 of the biggest reasons why I think if you are currently a Nikon DSLR shooter, you really should consider getting the Nikon Z6 II as your first mirrorless camera. When people ask me what is the biggest advantage if you shoot with a mirrorless camera compared to DSLR camera, usually my first answer is the electronic viewfinder. Now I understand a lot of people like the optical viewfinder. I like it too, especially if you are shooting with one of the professional or the flagship Nikon DSLR camera. You have that really big and really bright optical viewfinder. That viewfinder is just gorgeous and there's no lag at all. But the electronic viewfinder actually has many advantages compared to the optical viewfinder. I think the biggest thing is, with an electronic viewfinder, you can preview what your final photo or video is gonna be look like compared to the optical viewfinder. With the optical viewfinder, I think a lot of you have the experience that when you take a photo, you thought the photo is gonna look like this and end up it looks like completely different. And a lot of time it's because the exposure that you see with your eye through the optical viewfinder is quite a bit different to what the camera want to capture, especially when you shooting some high contrast scene. For example, if you have a strong backlight, then the photo that are captured by the camera quite often is very different to what you see through the optical viewfinder. If you are an experienced photographer, you probably can predict what the photo is going to be look like, and you may apply some exposure compensation so that the photo you capture will look more or less like what you want to capture. But if you are shooting with a mirrorless camera, then you don't need to worry about it at all, because what you see through the electronic viewfinder is gonna be exactly, or maybe 95% exactly like what it's gonna be look like after you take the photo. You can preview the exposure. You can immediately see if the photo is underexposed or overexposed. If you apply some wrong setting, you will easily see that, oh no, I have set the ISO to 25,600 on a bright sunny day, so I need to dial it down because everything is overexposed. You can immediately fix that. And also you can preview the white balance setting. So if you got the right balance wrong, you can see that immediately as well. So what that means is, if you are shooting with a mirrorless camera like the Z6 II, the moment that you click the shutter button, you would know pretty much exactly what the photo is gonna be look like. You know the exposure, you know the color, white balance, because you can already preview it before you even click the shutter button. And that would just give you a lot more confidence, especially if you are quite new to photography. But even for more experienced shooter, like for me, I've been shooting weddings professionally for a very long time. I found that when I switched to using the mirrorless camera like the Z6, the number of photos I'm shooting is a lot lower when I'm doing my job, because I have a lot more confidence about what the final photo is gonna be look like. So I am not as paranoid, so I don't like double shoot or triple shoot the photo that I need to do like how I usually would do when I'm shooting with a DSLR camera. So yeah, that is definitely one big advantage using a electronic viewfinder. But that's not the only advantage shooting with an electronic viewfinder. Another advantage shooting with the electronic viewfinder is you can overlay a lot more information on top of the frame that you are looking at. For example, you can see the histogram, so you can see roughly what the exposure is on top of the exposure preview that is already provided to you. And you can also have the virtual horizon overlay on top, so that you can make sure your camera is not tilted if you don't want it to be tilted. So all those extra information just help you to capture better quality photo. And another good thing with the electronic viewfinder is, after you took the photo, sometimes you want to check whether you got a good photo or not. With a DSLR, what you normally have to do is you have to pull the camera away from your eye, and then you can check the photo on the LCD screen at the back of the camera. But with the electronic viewfinder, you don't even have to do that. You can just keep looking through the electronic viewfinder. You can play the photo and then you can just see it immediately like that. So you don't have to keep doing this kind of thing all the time. And that's also applied to if you want to change the settings, because you can also just enable the menu and you just keep looking like this and you can see all the menu items and you can change everything. So if you want to change some settings, check your photos, is a lot easier and faster with a electronic viewfinder compared to the optical viewfinder. And before we move on to the second point, there's one more thing that I also really like with the electronic viewfinder is when you are shooting under very dim lighting, especially when you are shooting with a slightly slower lens. For example, if you're shooting with a f4 lens, with optical viewfinder, with the DSLR, a lot of time when you look through the viewfinder, you can't really see things very clearly because it's already too dark there and you are using a f4 lens, so you can't really see things very clearly. But with a mirrorless camera and its electronic viewfinder, because the camera will help you boost the brightness of the picture that you are capturing, so you can preview the scene a lot better. You can see the picture that you are going to capture very clearly through the electronic viewfinder because it is a lot brighter. So that makes shooting under low light a lot easier compared to a DSLR. This is something I didn't really think about, but when I was shooting some night events with a DSLR and my Z6 side by side, then I suddenly noticed there's a huge difference between what I can see through the viewfinder. Now, the second big reason why I think people should switch over to the Z6 II is the autofocus system. Now, I know some of you will say, no way, the autofocus on the D5 or maybe D6 or even D850 is much better than the autofocus system on any Nikon mirrorless camera. And yes, D6 is probably still better if you want to shoot some really fast action that the tracking system on the D6 may still perform better than the Nikon Z6 II. But I think for 95% of users that don't need to shoot like really fast action, really fast and unpredictable action, the autofocus system on the Z6 II is just a lot better than any DSLR camera. And the reason I say that is, with a Nikon DSLR camera, the autofocus points are usually quite like near the center of the frame, and also the best and the most accurate autofocus points are all near the center of the frame. So if you use the autofocus point that is slightly further away from the center, usually they are not the cross type one, so the accuracy is not quite as good as the one right in the middle. Compared to the Z6 II, which has 273 autofocus points, and the autofocus points are spread across the entire frame. So you could put your autofocus point pretty much anywhere inside the frame, and the performance of the autofocus is the same no matter you are using the center point or using the point right at the corner, right at the edge of the frame. You will still get the same autofocus performance. So you don't have to worry about, oh, my autofocus accuracy will now drop a little bit because I'm using one of the autofocus point that is more near the edge of the frame. So no such problem with a mirrorless camera like the Z6 II. And another big advantage is, with the Z6 II, you now also have the face tracking and also the eye tracking and also the animal tracking. Now, eye tracking is something that Nikon has added to the Z6 after the Z6 was released through one of the firmware update. But the Z6 II, you also have a few improvements regarding the eye tracking. First thing is, you can use the eye tracking even when you are shooting video, which is something you can't do with the Z6. And the second thing is, if you want to enable the face or eye tracking previously with the Z6, you have to use the auto area, which means all the autofocus, you just give it to the camera for it to handle it for you, which is nice and easy, but not exactly what you always want to do if you want to have a bit of control. So with the Z6 II, you can now enable the face tracking or animal tracking if you are using the wide autofocus area. So that means you can still have control of the autofocus area, but at the same time you can take advantage of the face, eye or animal detection, which is a very handy feature when you are shooting events or portrait, because you can let the camera to help you pick the subject in the frame, so you can focus more about other things, for example the timing or the framing and other things. And the camera does a pretty good job in detecting the eye and face in the frame, and overall I think the accuracy seems to be pretty good as well. And also another advantage is, with the face or eye detection, you can easily give the camera to anyone and ask them to take a photo for you. For example, if you are traveling, if you want to give a DSLR camera to someone, a random person that walk past, and ask them to take a photo for you, a lot of time the photo will probably not be in focus. because most people don't really know how to use the DSLR to take a photo. But with face detection, eye detection, you can set it to face detection and give it to any stranger that walk past, even set it at f1.4, and you should still be able to get a photo with you that is actually in focus. And the third big reason for you to switch over to the Z6 II is the live view. I know a lot of DSLR shooters, you don't really use live view because you prefer to look through the bright optical viewfinder instead of using that LCD screen at the back. But maybe one of the reasons why you don't like to use the live view is because Nikon's live view implementation on the DSLR is pretty average, I would say. Like when you switch between the optical viewfinder and the live view, it takes a bit of time. It need to flip the mirror up. Even like the D850 definitely feel a bit slow and like a second-class citizen. And also when you are shooting with the live view mode on the Nikon DSLR, the autofocus is just slow. It takes like half a second or 1 second for you to lock on the target. Even on a very bright sunny day, it still takes a bit of time, and it doesn't really do any tracking at all. But this is no longer the case with the mirrorless camera like the Nikon Z6 II, because with the mirrorless camera, the live view using the LCD screen is virtually the same as shooting with the electronic viewfinder, because they are still going through the same processing, and there's no mirror that distinguish between the viewfinder and the LCD screen at the back. The only difference is whether you are using the little electronic viewfinder here or the bigger LCD screen here to let you to preview the frame. So shooting with a live view on the Nikon Z6 II is virtually the same as shooting with the electronic viewfinder. The autofocus work exactly the same no matter you are using the electronic viewfinder or the live view. That means the autofocus performance is really good, and you can also easily use the touch screen to control autofocus when you are shooting in the live view mode. So overall, the live view mode shooting experience with a camera like the Nikon Z6 II is like 100 times better than if you are using a Nikon DSLR camera. I find myself using the LCD screen more and more, even when I'm shooting weddings or events. A lot of time I just use the LCD screen, especially when I have to put the camera like high up above me or at a very low angle. I just use the LCD screen because the shooting experience is pretty much the same, and it gives me the advantage with that tilty LCD screen on the back of the camera. The fourth reason why you should switch over to a mirrorless camera like the Nikon Z6 II is its video recording feature. Nikon is never really a video-centric camera company, so all their DSLR camera don't really have really great video recording feature, and also because of the live view implementation of the DSLR is not really good. We just talked about it before. So overall, not a lot of people would use a Nikon DSLR camera to shoot video. But now, with the release of the Nikon Z6, Nikon has completely changed what their camera can do in terms of video recording. Now with the Z6 II, and probably because of the dual processor that they put into the camera, the video feature is even better than the original Z6. So you can record 4K video up to 30 frames per second using the full sensor, the full width of the sensor, that gives you very high quality video. Even if you want to shoot at high ISO, the video quality is still excellent. And you can also shoot 4K video in 10-bit with the flat picture profile that gives you more flexibility in the post-processing stage. And Z6 II also allow you to shoot 4K video up to 60 frames per second. There's a bit of crop, but this is a new feature that is now added to the Z6 II. And if the 10-bit 4K video is still not good enough for you, just like the original Z6, you can do a paid firmware update, and then that will allow you to output raw 4K video to Atomos Ninja recorder, and that will allow you to record 4K footage in the raw quality, and that gives you even more post-processing flexibility. And this time with the Z6 II, it doesn't just output in the ProRes RAW format. You can also output it in the Blackmagic RAW, which is something new added to the Z6 II. There are not too many cameras in the market that can output the Blackmagic RAW, which has some advantage over the ProRes RAW. So this is another option that you can do with the Z6 II. So what that means is, with the Z6 II, it's not only capable of capturing some high quality still photos, you can also use it to capture some really high quality 4K video as well. The fifth big reason why you want to switch over to the Z6 II is the lens support. You don't have to buy any new lens if you are currently a Nikon DSLR shooter. You have a lot of the latest autofocus lenses. You just need to use the FTZ adapter, which is currently free if you buy the Z6 II here in New Zealand during the launch promotion period. So with the FTZ adapter, and if you mount your Nikon DSLR lens on it, pretty much everything works exactly the same. Of course, you now have the advantage of having the autofocus point like pretty much anywhere on the frame, and you can also use the eye detection, face detection, and animal detection, which is something you couldn't do with the Nikon DSLR. So the autofocus performance is pretty much the same, and all the other features like the VR would work the same. You still can record all the information, EXIF information. So your autofocus Nikon DSLR lenses would work pretty much exactly the same, if not slightly better, when you mount it on the Nikon Z6 II. The only exception is if you are using some of the really old Nikon autofocus lenses, the old AF style, which means the one that doesn't have autofocus motor built into the lens. Those are the really old one. Then those wouldn't autofocus with the FTZ adapter. But if you are using any of the newer Nikon autofocus lenses, all those AFS and AFP lenses, then you still get the full autofocus and pretty much all the support. And actually, even for me, I have been doing all those weddings, shooting events, portrait, and everything over the last 2 years with the Z6, and I was just using all my Nikon DSLR lenses. And that's just because it just works very good. So yes, you don't have to buy any new lenses if you are moving to the Nikon Z6 II. And another thing is, if you have some old Nikon manual focus lenses, with the Z6 II, it's a lot easier to manual focus because you have all those extra features with the electronic viewfinder. You can still do the magnify or enable the peaking when you are shooting. So that make focus a lot easier and much more accurate, and you got a lot higher keep rate if you are using a Nikon Z6 II compared to pretty much any of the Nikon DSLR camera. Now, while I have been shooting with my Nikon DSLR lenses on my Nikon Z6 very happily, one big advantage with this new Nikon Z system is that it has a new lens mount, which is the Z mount. The Z mount is a lot bigger in diameter, and also the flange distance is a lot more shorter compared to the DSLR's F mount, and that means that gives Nikon a lot more flexibility in terms of the lens design. Now, first thing, I think a lot of people got the wrong idea is that the mirrorless camera is all about having small package, small lenses, make everything smaller and lighter. While to some certain extent, maybe it's true. For example, you don't have the mirror anymore, so yeah, that definitely lose a bit of weight. But the biggest advantage with the Nikon Z mount is actually it allows Nikon to create some much better quality in terms of image quality lenses for the Nikon Z camera. I have done quite a few different Nikon Z mount lenses review over the last year or two, and I also compare them with the equivalent Nikon DSLR lenses. For example, I did the Nikon 85 1.8 Z mount lens, and I compared it with the AFS 85 1.8G. So they are both 85 1.8 lens, and there is a huge difference in terms of the image quality. The Z mount lenses are a lot sharper. It has a lot less chromatic aberration. The focus briefing is much better controlled, and pretty much everything, if you compare the Z-mount lenses with the old Nikon DSLR lenses, everything is so much better with the new Z-mount lenses. So for me, I am really looking forward to upgrade my lenses to the new Z-mount lenses. And so if you are someone who want the best picture quality for your photos, the Nikon Z-mount lenses is the lens that you should upgrade to, and you can only do that if you upgrade to a mirrorless camera like this Nikon Z6 II. So these are my 5 biggest reasons why I think if you are currently a Nikon DSLR shooter, you should really consider upgrading to the Nikon Z6 II. If you have never used a mirrorless camera before, yes, it would take a little bit of time for you to get used to because the electronic viewfinder is a little bit different, but it is still a Nikon camera. So the overall body design, the ergonomics, the menu system, and a lot of things are still very similar to the Nikon DSLR camera. If you compare this Z6 II to the D750, the difference is not really that big apart from the viewfinder, which I think is a big benefit over the optical viewfinder. So yeah, it may take you a few days or maybe a week or two, but once you get used to and get familiar with the Nikon Z6 II, you will probably really love this transition, and you may even wonder why you didn't switch over to the Nikon Z camera 2 years ago.